Okay, good morning guys. So I had a very lovely day yesterday. I visited with friends that I have here in Prickly Bay, and my friends on the cat launched their cat yesterday. It didn't go super great, but it's okay. Today we have a couple of missions in mind. As you guys remember, I fiberglassed over the hole in the cockpit, but that still leaves me with a heating problem that I want to solve. So we're going to dinghy in. Teddy's going to come with me today, and we're going to dinghy into Budget Marine, and we're going to look for a hose fitting for the backup bilge hose to vent it properly, sort of out to the cockpit. And then today's second project is, if you remember from the sail over yesterday, my boat speed paddle wheel was not working properly. They get growth on them and then they don't spin freely. So we're going to open up the bottom of the boat and we're going to pull out the paddle wheel, clean it, and reinsert it. And I'll bring you guys along and show you how I do that. It always makes me nervous to have a big gaping 2-inch hole sinking your boat in a hurry. But if you're careful, B&G did a really good job with the system that they came up with to swap them out. So it's not as scary as you think it's going to be. I get that the dirt dwellers have a weird fascination and obsession with clothing, so I've got my holy moo-moo and a crappy old pair of shorts ready to go. The dinghy is launched, it's fueled up, and we're ready to go. Being the lonely girl that I am, I saw a boatload of young people, and I decided to go over and introduce myself and make new friends. But more about that later. This is another interesting story. There's a Canadian guy that lives on here named Camus. He lives on no money. And he has actually sailed that boat from Canada. It's interesting. How are you? But sailors, we need to not get distracted by these side stories. We've launched the dinghy and come to shore for a very specific mission. We need to go to Budget Marine because there's some parts that we need to buy for today's projects. Us pasty white Irish girls need to avoid the sun like the plague. That's why I wear the hood on the holy moo-moo. It's actually a sundress. Okie dokie. We are back home on Wild Child. I spent the morning adventuring around. I'm not sure how much of it I filmed or how much I can show you. I'm going to show you a little bit. I socialized and I also made new friends. The primary mission for this morning was bilge through haul. So, for you sailors out there, this is something that you'll understand. Bilge makes all of the bilge pumps, and they brilliantly, like a U.S. corporate evil bastard, patented their 1 1/8 inch hose that fits all of their 1 1/8 inch bilges, and then you have to purchase their special proprietary patented 1 1/8 through hauls and fittings at enormous corporate profit. So although Budget Marine had basically the exact same thing for 10 EC, I had to spend 100 EC on this because this is patented and specific to the bilge and the bilge hose. The one that Budget Marine had was slightly not the right size and slightly isn't going to fit, and the threads are just slightly mismatched, so they don't violate the patent rights of bilge, and bilge gets to force you to spend a ridiculous amount of money on their plastic crap because they cornered the market. All right, I'm frustrated. Can you feel it? Owning a boat is very expensive and you get ripped off constantly, and it hurts my feelings because I am not rich. I have very, very limited money, so I can't just throw around money like crazy on all their stupid patented crap. But what are you gonna do? They backed you into a corner, bent you over the barrel, and they're gonna give it to you. So pucker up and smile, sweetheart. You're about to take a wallet raping. Now the secret surprise for today is there was another jumble sale over at the marina. I'm in a different bay from the last jumble sale that you saw. They had a jumble sale, which seems to be the Caribbean word for yard sale or garage sale, if you didn't know. Because you just never know what treasure some other sailor has on their boat that they want to get rid of at a really good price for you. Since I'm really poor, cheap and free are my favorite words. And look what I found, huh? Oh, so sexy. Oh, yes. I found a pair of 30-watt solar panels for 100 EC, or about 30 US dollars, or about 50 Canadian dollars. Another sailor here had them mounted on his dinghy because he had an electric electric motor on his dinghy, and he had a battery and a charging system for his dinghy, which is pretty cool. He doesn't need them anymore because the electric engine in the salty ocean didn't last 6 months before it rusted out and went to shit, because the ocean is horrible on everything electrical and everything we own. So then he's got these extra 30-watt solar panels that he doesn't need. So the big thing about sailboats is every sailboat wishes that they had more solar power, except catamarans, because they have a ridiculous amount of real estate to mount them. But monohulls, we don't really have the real estate, the roof space to mount solar panels. We're very limited in the overhead direct exposure to the sun real estate we have. But I have a little bit of real estate. I couldn't fit a big solar panel to boost up my energy production, but these little ones, I found a perfect home for them, and now we have a new project. We're going to mount the new solar. So last week when I was in the other bay, I fiberglassed over and filled in that hole in the cockpit floor. It's gone now, and you'd never even know that there used to be a hole there. But this leaves me with a different problem to solve. So if we go down into Wildchild's big fancy engine room, there are 3 refrigeration compressors venting hot air into this space, plus the engine compartment is in that way. And when the engine's running, obviously that gets very hot. So the cooling fan that I had mounted in here, that is now all fiberglassed up with no hole anymore. I had a cooling fan in here to keep this compartment kind of cooler. But now it's sealed up to be watertight because it makes more sense for sailing. But I was thinking it's still a good idea to vent the engine compartment. It still needs to breathe. If I bring you guys down in the hole with me, and it's a very tight space, sorry about that, but this hose here is the backup bilge pump. So WildChild has a main bilge pump, and if it were to ever fail, there's a backup bilge pump that goes off when the water reaches a higher level. It sounds an alarm down below, but if you were ever sailing and let's say you cracked your hull and your boat was sinking and your main bilge pump couldn't keep up because the water inflow was so much, and that the secondary backup pump had to kick on as well to keep up with the flow, and it was in the middle of the night and you were sailing on the ocean in 10-foot waves, you'd kind of want to know about it. So one of the things that I decided to do is that the backup bilge pump vents into the cockpit floor at your feet. So if you didn't hear the alarm, you would say, hey, why is the secondary bilge pouring water on my feet as I'm at the helm sailing? And then you would know to go investigate it. So again, when I bought WildChild, there was already a hole here that wasn't doing anything. It's just a plain vent hole. So what I started thinking that I could do now is I could take the bilge hose, vent it through a different hole in the side and use a proper fitting, and that this open hole going into the cockpit, I could mount the cooling fan to be, I'm not sure, sucking out the hot air or blowing in cooler air. I haven't decided yet. So this will be the air vent, but we have to move the bilge holes and put it straight out the side here, and that's going to take a little work. Now that the hole is ready, we know that this is how thick the cockpit is, so that the through hull is going to pinch like this. This is the special, unique, patented 1 1/8 barb fitting for the bilge hose threaded piece female that's going to attach onto the male, but I don't really want to have all of this extra thread sticking out more far than necessary. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the male threaded part with a hacksaw, and then it'll be the right length. Then we unthread the nut, which will help recut the threads back in and fix any mess that I make with my plastic cutting. And then we should have a perfectly sized fitting. So I have this little tiny pipe hacksaw on the boat, which works just fine for plastic. This little board is my bench vise, and now we're just going to saw it through. Oh man, it is so hot here all the time. The sweat is just pouring off me. So the reason we use a hacksaw is we want to do it slowly. I do have power tools that could have done that a lot faster and rougher, but the thing is it'll melt the plastic, and you don't want to melt the plastic. The idea was by cutting it slowly and leaving the nut on, I'm able to make the threads smooth enough that now I just undo the nut, and as the nut undoes itself, it will cut the plastic to make its own new threads to sort of clean up the mess of the tooth edges, and then it creates its own new thread. It's a secret little trick a mechanic taught me once. That way you don't have to retap it or re-dye it, I guess. Now technically the correct thing to do would be to use 5200 as the sealant around the hole. But this is not outside exposed to the open ocean, so it's not really going to take a lot of direct punishment. I looked in my plumbing box and I found a rubber gasket that will fit. It's just something so that when it rains, the rain doesn't drip around the seal. This will work for the purposes that we have now, because I don't want to break open a $100 tube of 5200 just for this little seal. And then we screw it in, and ta-da, look how easy that's going to be. Bam! Installed. The through hull is now installed. So all we have to do now is we have to cut the bilge hose, attach it on the end, seal it up with a clampy clamp, and then we're good to go. So it's cut. We're just going to have to add a clamp, and then we stick it on, and then bam, we've rerouted the secondary backup bilge output hose. Just like that. And now the next project's going to be a little harder for me to film for you guys, because it kind of requires two hands. So in the floor here at the base of the companionway steps, we pull out the center drop board, and this is where the boat speed sensor and depth sensor is for the boat. You can see that I've got a plug available, and what I essentially have to do is I have to remove the sensor, and then the water comes, and then I have a 2-inch hole in my boat, and the water comes gushing up like a fountain, and then I have to plug the hole with the plug, clean the sensor, and then switch them back, all without sinking my boat. So for B&G, the paddle wheel sensor is combined with the depth sounder. This half of it is the depth sounder, and this half is the paddle wheel. And if you look, she's kind of gotten all crusty up, pretty good with crustaceans. So we have to clean this off so that the paddle wheel spins freely, and it'll be good if we clean off the depth. There we go, sounder. Okay. Okie dokie, here we go. Splashy, splashy. And done. Yep, 37 degrees Celsius at 55% humidity on the boat right now. I am the queen of the nerds. I do live alone on a sailboat in the tropics. After a long, hot day of getting stuff done with my teddy bear to keep me company, at least I get to dunk in the ocean to cool off. Cheers, sailors.